Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that we audio and video record our meetings, as well as to the board members to please remember to hit your button on the microphone and to share. They're wireless, so there's only a limited number, so please share with your partners, your neighbors, when needed. And with that, I'm going to sit down and turn it over to our Finance Committee Chairman.
Good morning. We hereby call to order the December 19th meeting of the Finance Committee for the Regional Transportation Authority. Good morning, everybody. I think we'll start with the roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Okay. Director Colson? Present. Director Groven? Present. Director Holt? Present. Director Cotel? Here. Director Lewis? Here. Director Ross? Here. Director Sager? Here. Director Triani?
Here.
By phone with the necessary paperwork completed. Director Melvin?
Here.
We have a full quorum of 9 present with no absent. If the record would also show that Directors Andalcio, Carey, Frega, Fuentes, Higgins, and Chairman Dillard are all also present.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the meeting that was held November 21st. Are there any comments? Are there any questions? Are there any changes? Anything at all? Anyone? Okay, great. Then I'd like a motion to approve in a second, please. Director Groven and Director Lewis, seconds, please. I think
Would you like a baseline roll call?
we would, please. Thank you.
Director Colson? Director Groven? Yes. Director Holt? Yes. Director Cotel? Aye. Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Ross? Yes. Director Sager?
Yes.
Director Triani?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
9 ayes.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 3A, the report on the monthly financial results from October 2019, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Eva DeLaurentis. I'm a project manager and analyst in the budget division. Today, I'm presenting the year-to-date financial results through October. Ridership and operating revenue remain unfavorable to budget, but expense performance continues to be very good. The regional recovery ratio finished the month 0.8 points favorable to budget at 51.5%. System ridership in October was 4.2% lower than prior year and 1.9% below budget. Year-to-date ridership remains down 3% from 2018. October is historically the highest ridership month as students are back in school and there are no major holidays and generally fair weather. However, there was a snow event on Halloween of this year. CTA also performed a line cut on the O'Hare branch of the Blue Line, which disrupted service. And it is important to note that the CPS teacher strike closed schools for 11 days, which likely also contributed to some of the unfavorable results relative to budget and prior year. In fact, October's 4.2% year-over-year ridership decrease was second only to January's ridership decline. Back on the summary table, each service board continues to record unfavorable ridership results. The shortfall at Pace Suburban Service was 5.7%, highlighted in red. In total, the system is 9 million rides unfavorable to budget. Operating revenue was $16.8 million or 1.7% unfavorable to budget. $13.8 million or more than 80% of the shortfall can be attributed to the lower levels of reduced fare reimbursement from the state. PACE operating revenue is 4.8% unfavorable to budget, highlighted in red, and it's primarily due to lower than budgeted fare revenue caused by ridership shortfalls. The public funding section of the dashboard shows that the results were 2.1% below budget due to unfavorable sales tax, PTF, and RET receipts. CTA's public funding was $21.1 million or 3.1% unfavorable to budget, highlighted in red, due to underperforming sales tax, PTF, and lagging real estate transfer tax results. Year-to-date operating expenses were $65.9 million, or 2.8% favorable to budget, with all three service boards and ADA paratransit reporting favorable results. Metro results were 3.3% favorable to budget, highlighted in light blue, due to favorability in all expense categories except insurance and claims. Pace's results were 4.5% favorable to budget, also highlighted in light blue, due to favorability in all categories except ADA paratransit overhead. At the regional level, favorable expenses more than offset the unfavorable revenue and public funding, producing a net result which was $21.7 million favorable to budget, an improvement of $2.4 million from last month's result. ADA paratransit recorded a net result favorable by more than 3%, which was driven by strong expense performance. Through October, the regional recovery ratio of 51.5% is favorable to budget by 0.8 percentage points, solidly above the 50% statutory requirement. The fair recovery ratio of 36.4% and the all revenue recovery ratio of 43% were both lower than prior year, as expenses have increased versus 2018, while operating revenues were slightly down. In the right section, the CTA's recovery ratio is 0.2 points above budget. Pace is essentially at budget, and Metro's recovery ratio is 2.6 points above budget due to favorable revenue and favorable expense performance. In summary, the service board's expense performance through October continues to offset the effects of ridership and revenue shortfalls. The regional recovery ratio continues to extend above the 50% level, with 2 months of results remaining. That concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the ridership story is a tough story. Any questions, any comments, anyone? Yeah, Director Lewis.
B, I seem to remember.
Oh, I'm standing in front of her.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
Last year, there was going to be an initiative where we're going to try and connect with other last mile providers to really kind of get at the ridership issue. Has there been anything done concretely relative to trying to, shore up that element, because the ridership continues to decline, and at some point, the cut in expenses is not going to basically be enough to support the recovery ratio.
I don't have any updated information. I don't know if Leanne or Jill do, but I know that they continue to explore that. I know Metro was doing, was in discussions with, I know at their board meeting, they were talking about, continuing to work and explore those partnerships. I don't know that anything definitive has been decided. We can follow up and see if they've done anything further with it. We'll do that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, clearly the service boards continue to do a great job at controlling expenses and finding new ways to manage things, but I guess you can only do that for so long, right? So it's a tough story. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, anyone? Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 3B, the presentation of the semi-annual project management oversight report, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Violet Gunka. I work in the Project Management Oversight Office. Today, I will present the current report on project management oversight. You received the PMO report as part of your board briefing a couple weeks ago, and it includes details for every project. The report was designed to make it straightforward for our board to easily see progress, issues, and risks for the transit capital projects in the region. The PMO program currently includes oversight of all state-funded transit projects, regardless of budget, and all other projects with budgets of $10 million or more, regardless of funding source. Together, this set of projects for the current reporting period represents $5.5 billion. As you know, after nearly a decade without a state of Illinois capital program, transit in the RTA region will get a much-needed infusion from the Rebuild Illinois bill passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor in June 2019. The state-funded projects presented in this report are part of the prior year's program. As a bit of a background, RTA implements the PMO program pursuant to Section 2.01B of the RTA Act. RTA is required to oversee the Service Board's capital programs and expenditures. PMO is part of RTA's requirement to fulfill this requirement. Specific involvement includes direct reports and meetings with service board project teams, attendance at other project meetings with service board project teams, and project site visits and periodic reporting to the Illinois Department of Transportation. RTA PMO staff is augmented by engineering and project management consultants who provide necessary expertise as well as additional staff resources. Can you go back a slide, please? Thank you. At this time, there are 14 projects remaining in the state-funded program. 3 of those projects were completed in this reporting period. So the number of projects in this program will decrease until the money from the new bill starts flowing. Currently, all state-funded projects are on budget. 9 of the 14 projects are on schedule. The 5 projects that are behind schedule are the 95th Street Terminal, Metro Hazel Crest Station, Metro Union Pacific North Line Bridges and Ravenswood Station, Union Pacific West Line Expansion, and Pace Bus Stop Improvement at Joliet Gateway Center, which is currently on hold. Next slide. The change order amounts represent cumulative totals for currently ongoing state-funded projects, and 64% of the region's projects are without change orders. The vast majority of extra costs for change orders has been for added value to the project and for unforeseen conditions. The total cost of change orders represents about 2% of the total budget for the state-funded projects. While all projects are detailed in the report, we have selected one project from each service board to highlight. CTA completed the rehabilitation of Belmont and Jefferson Park stations on the Blue Line. For Belmont Station, this included a new station canopy, site improvements, enlarged bus prepaid boarding area, renovated station electrical and finishes, as well as refurbished platform furniture. For Jefferson Park, improvements included reconstructed bus turnarounds, renovated entrance and customer waiting areas, enhanced lighting, improved signage, new public art, and updated communication elements. Metro completed the reconstruction of the Deering Bridge over the north branch of the Chicago River on the Union Pacific North Line. The project also included the rehabilitation of the Webster Avenue Bridge and the fill of the bridge over the former Milwaukee Road just north of Deering Bridge. PACE executed a change order for additional 6 CNG buses. Currently, there are 102 CNG buses in service. The additional order will bring the total of CNG fleet to 108. The additional vehicles are expected to be delivered in July of 2020. This concludes my presentation. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions? Anyone? Yeah, Director Groban.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got kind of the category where we have the most increased spend is called value addition. Can you just give us a feel for what do we mean by value addition?
So if once the project is started and if some of the parts of the station or things are in a condition that they, when they were designing, they expected it will be in better condition, but once they go into the project, it just makes sense to add that additional work to the station when the contractor's already there. So it's value added because there's additional improvements.
Thank you. Any other questions? I kind of have a question. So 64% have no change orders. Is that pretty good? That's a good ratio?
It is pretty good, and I did highlight that the number of projects in the program keeps decreasing. So obviously, if you have 5 projects that have change orders and you're going on a pool of 14, it's going to seem kind of high. But it's not unusual to have change orders on projects, especially construction projects, because like we're talking about the added value or the unforeseen conditions. Sometimes, especially for underground, once you start digging, you don't know what you're going to discover. So sometimes there's change orders for unforeseen conditions, or sometimes it just makes sense to add additional work at the time when we already have a contractor set up. So it's not unusual to see change orders. And 64%, I think it's pretty good.
That's good.
And it's only 2% of the budget of the project. So when you look at it as a whole picture.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? John? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to item 4A, ordinances authorizing the quarterly amendment of the 2019 through 2023 capital program.
Good morning,
Morning.
Chairman Melvin and members of the Finance Committee and Board. I'm Tatiana Jane, Manager of Capital Programs, and we're here to request your approval of two ordinances. First, an amendment to the 2019-2023 Capital Program, incorporating changes in program revenues and expenses for CTA, METRA, and PACE. And second, a new project scope and funding adjustment of METRA's Innovation, Coordination, and Enhancement, or ICE projects. Let me walk you through the changes we are recommending in the first ordinance. This quarter, we are asking you to approve a total net funding increase to the Regional 5-Year Capital Program of $148.73 million. This increase affects current and future years. The total net increase for CTA is $125.77 million, for METRA $22.95 million, and for PACE $20,000. The $125.77 million increase for CTA consists of $95.86 million in CTA bond issuances to account for existing project commitments, $77.8 million in reprogrammed CTA ground transportation tax GTT bonds and red, purple, and modernization RPM bonds. CTA decreased the amount of issuance of these funds in 2019 because the CMAQ funds became available earlier than anticipated, but increased issuance for 2020 and beyond. CTA increased also the amount of debt repayment for GTT and RPM bonds by $76 million, which reflects the increased proposed amount of bond issuances, and $19.65 million in federal discretionary funding and $8.46 million in other service board funds. For METRA, the $22.95 million increase affects only current year and consists of $17.84 million of new federal State of Good Repair grant for A32 bridge on Milwaukee East District North Line, $2.85 million in reprogrammed METRA Fairbox capital funds as the local match to this grant, and $1.52 million in Canadian Pacific Railroad funds, also as a contribution to a match to the same grant. And in addition, $740,000 of ICE funds reprogrammed from completed projects. For PACE, the $20,000 increase affecting current year and consists of federal formula lapsing funds from Round Lake UZA. The details of these funding changes are included in capital program schedules 2A and 2B and attached to the ordinance. Moving to the second ordinance, we are requesting your approval of the new METRA operating ICE project within the Ridership and Fare Enhancement Initiative and the reprogramming of 2016 ICE capital funds to this new project, and scope addition and funding adjustment of electronic crew calling METRA ICE project. RTA staff has reviewed these requests and found them to be justified as outlined in their ordinance request memo. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding any of these ordinance requests.
Great, thank you for your report. Any questions or comments? Anyone? Can we take these two ordinances together? Yeah. We can? Okay, great. So we have two ordinances before us. One for the approval of the quarterly amendment for 2019-2023, and the other for adopting the 2020 Regional Service Board budgets. We can take them together. Any comments, objections? Yes. Yes.
After.
Would you like to?
There were two ordinances with the capital amendments, so those are the two that we're
So
taking
those are the two we're
together.
going to do now? Right, okay, yeah, okay, great. Then we'll do these together. Can I have a motion, please? Director Ross, seconded by Director Cotel. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Director Colson? Yes. Director Groven? Yes. Director Holt? Aye. Director Cotel? Aye. Director Lewis? Yes. Director Ross? Aye. Director Sager? Yes. Director Triani?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
9 ayes.
Thank you very much. And I think that brings us to the end of this. So we're going to adjourn. If there's no further business to come before the public session of the Finance
No,
Committee.
no, no.
Oh, I'm sorry?
The budget item.
Oh, sorry. We need that. Yes.
We need a vote.
That's item 4B? Yeah, 4B. Okay, so on item 4B, are there?
Before me would be.
Okay, so B is going to discuss that. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and board. As I begin my presentation, I'd like to thank the RTA budget and capital staffs as well as the capital team for their efforts on the 2020 RTA Regional Budget and Capital Program. Each budget season represents its own set of challenges, and the challenges this year were a good problem to have, right? It was focused on the capital program due to the large and welcome increase in state funding. Let's start with a recap of the seven-month process which has led us to today. On May 16th, the RTA Board approved and released the 2020 budget call. The budget call defined the information and requirements that the service boards follow in the development of their budgets. We'd like to thank CTA Metro and PACE for a collaborative effort, which resulted in a funding agreement adopted by the RTA Board on September 12th. The service boards each submitted their budgets and capital programs to the RTA in October, and CTA Metro and PACE boards adopted their 2020 budgets and capital programs at their November board meetings. Now going on to this slide, it shows the schedule for the RTA 2020 budget and capital program, county board presentations, and public hearings as required by the RTA Act. Leanne and I briefed each of the 6 county boards on the 2020 regional budget and capital program. Many of you assisted us in attending those. The proposed 2020 regional budget and capital program has been available for review and comment on the homepage of the RTA website since November 14th. At the RTA Finance Committee meeting on November 21st, the service boards and the RTA presented their 2020 budgets and responded to any questions. Also on November 21st, all the RTA public hearings were held simultaneously here at CMAP headquarters at 2 locations in suburban Cook County and in each of the collar counties as required. Live streaming of the Finance Committee and the board meeting on the RTA website, as we do every month, provided the public with additional opportunities to watch the service board and RTA presentations directly. The public could then state their comments at the meeting, submit them to the RTA staff at the remote hearing locations, or email them from anywhere. Comments could also be made via email at any time since November 14th. 4 people actually presented testimony at the public hearings, including representatives from the Metropolitan Planning Council, the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, and the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club. In addition, we received public comments via email that were summarized in our board memo. Finally, at the start of today's board meeting, we will hold a final comment period for members of the public to speak directly to the RTA board. So now looking at the numbers, let's now examine the revenue side of the proposed 2020 regional operating budget. So a state surcharge of 1.5% on RTA sales tax collections is assumed to remain in place, reducing RTA and service board funding by approximately $20 million per year. The budgeted public transportation fund level reflects a known 5% funding cut during state fiscal year 2020, but we're not assuming that that cut will continue to state fiscal year 2021 and beyond. Total revenue for 2020 operations is projected at $3.1 billion. Sales tax receipts of $1.3 billion are the largest revenue component of the 42% of the total. With no fare increases planned in 2020, service board operating revenue is projected to increase by 0.5% from the 2019 estimate to just under $1.2 billion. This is the second largest revenue component at 38%. The state's public transportation fund match on the RTA sales tax and the RET, the real estate transfer tax, amounts to $409 million. Reimbursement from the state for debt service on the Strategic Capital Improvement Program, or SCIP bonds, is expected to hold steady at $130 million. The real estate transfer tax levied in the city of Chicago to fund CTA operations is projected to grow by 3% in 2020 to $68.6 million. Finally, other revenue, including state ADA paratransit funding, federal funding for operations, and RTA agency revenue, represents only 1% of the total revenue for operations. Now looking at 2020 operating expenses, they are projected to grow by 2.2% from the 2019 estimate and by 0.5% from the 2019 budget. Collectively, the Service Board operating budgets comprise about 91% of the RTA operating expenses. CTA's operating budget represents just over half of regional expenses, followed by Metro at 27%, Pace Suburban Service at 8%, and Pace Regional ADA Paratransit Service at 6%. Each of the service board's budgets is balanced and meets or exceeds its recovery ratio requirements. RTA debt service of $217.6 million accounts for 7% of the regional expenses. This amount includes both principal and interest on both RTA and skip bonds that fund service board capital projects and interest on the RTA short-term debt. The RTA issues short-term debt to manage delays in state funding, primarily public transportation fund delays, which funds service boards operations, and the ASA and AFA, which reimburses the RTA for debt service on skip bonds. Remember that state sales tax is never delayed. There is simply a lag in when it gets distributed to us. RTA agency expenses account for 1.4% of the 2020 regional expenses. Finally, the joint self-insurance fund expenses of $5.9 million, and that is the premium on insurance policies that cover all three service boards, represent less than 0.25% of regional operating expenses. Now a look at recovery ratios. As I mentioned earlier, each of the service board's 2020 budgeted recovery ratios meet or exceed the required level adopted by the RTA board in September. As a result, the regional recovery ratio for 2020 is budgeted at 50.2%, so it exceeds the 50% statutory requirement. It is important to note that while the regional recovery ratio is budgeted lower than 2019's budgeted ratio of 50.6%, there is less downside risk because for 2020, the service boards have agreed to budget the state reduced fare reimbursement funding level at approximately $17.57 million rather than the $34 million that we've been budgeting at for the last 3 years, even though we've only been receiving half of that. So we won't experience an immediate revenue shortfall that you've seen on the dashboards in the initial period of time in the last few years related to the RFR. So now I'll turn my presentation over to Jill for a review of the capital program, and then we'll be back to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks, B.
Good morning.
The 5-year capital program is projected to be $8.3 billion, an increase of nearly $4 billion, or nearly twice the amount compared to the 2019 to the 2023 capital program. That's all thanks to the injection of funds from the Rebuild Illinois program, which totals over $3.7 billion. The chart on the left breaks the funding down by service board. The chart on the right illustrates the funding sources. State funds account for 45% of all funding. Federal funds are 41% of the program, and the other funding categories shown here represent 14% of the funding. This represents a more balanced funding approach compared to the past years when there were no state funds. In those years, nearly 80% of the capital plan was made up of federal funds. With the additional funds, the region will be better able to manage the backlog maintenance and rehabilitation of the system. The 2020 capital program is just over $2 billion, again more than double compared to 2019. CTA's 2020 capital program is greatest due to a large bond issuance in 2020. In addition, state funds represent 35% of the 2020 program, federal funds represent 33% of the program, and other local funds, including service board funds and ICE, represent about 1% of the program. Along with the infusion of capital from the Rebuild Illinois program, RTA and the service boards wanted to ensure that a consistent set of principles would be used to determine the priority and the programming of these new funds. 5 principles were agreed upon as they are shown here. Based on the 5th principle here and feedback from civic groups, RTA plans to continue to lead the effort to program new funds based on transparency and performance-based measures. The ordinance that you are considering today contains a provision that the RTA will work towards a regional agreement to program funding, starting for the program year of 2025, in a collaborative and transparent process. The ordinance also includes a timeline for the process to ensure it will be developed and implemented in the next budget cycle. At the RTA Special Finance Committee, you heard from each of the service boards about their individual programs, so I will provide a regional perspective of the projects included in the $8.3 billion five-year capital program. $3 billion will be expended on rolling stock, the largest asset category of the five-year program. Track and structure investments are $954 million. Modernization efforts will be $823 million, mainly comprised of CTA's continuing red-purple modernization and Your New Blue initiatives. And nearly $674 million will be invested in stations and passenger facilities. Debt service on CTA bonds totals $1.1 billion for the five-year capital program. To put the asset categories in a little more perspective, based on the principles previously mentioned, the service boards have allocated the new funds from the Rebuild Illinois program to several important projects across the region. In addition to focusing on state of good repair projects and deferred maintenance, due to the previous lack of state capital funds, some of the major projects each service board plans to complete with Rebuild Illinois funds are listed here. The 2020 to 24 capital programs shows CTA receiving almost $2 billion, Metro receiving nearly $1.5 billion, and PACE receiving $340 million from the Rebuild Illinois program that includes both state bond funds and PAYGO funds. In conclusion, staff recommends board adoption of the proposed operating budget and five-year capital program as outlined in this presentation. The budget proposals and capital programs that are detailed in the ordinance are balanced, based on reasonable assumptions, and meet the statutory regional recovery ratio of 50%. This concludes our presentation, and B and I will be happy to try to address any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for a very good report. Any questions, comments? Dr. Colson?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about managing debt. You know, the federal, state, city are wallowing in debt right now, and it's a continuous problem. A few months ago, we raised the ceiling of federal monies that could be used for debt service from 50% to 60%, which might be considered a move in the wrong direction. Just as an example, I noticed the CTA debt service is now consuming about a quarter of the capital money, and there are new bond issuances coming out in the next few years. I think paying down debt is not as sexy as cutting a ribbon on a new project, but it's often more important to the financial integrity of a system. So we have an opportunity, I think, with this new state money coming in, to issuing less service board debt. And I would expect the percentage to go down from 25%, and we need to watch that a little bit and keep it maybe as a goal in the next budget to get that percentage down. That's all.
Thank you, Director Colson. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have a motion? We need a motion to move and second, please. Director Lewis moves, second by Director Groven. Let's have a roll call, please.
Okay. Director Colson? Director Groven? Director Holt? Director Cotel? Director Lewis? Director Ross? Director Sager? Director Triani?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
We have 9 ayes.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your comments, Director Colson. Now to adjournment. If there's no further business to come before the public session of the Finance Committee, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn. Director Groven moves, Director Lewis seconds. Do I have leave? Leave.
Leave.
How about an all in favor?
Thank you.
And a
All
leave?
in favor? Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We are hereby adjourned.
That's the time.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I call the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Regional Transportation Authority to order, and will everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Director Andalcio. Director Carey. Director Colson. Director Frega. Director Fuentes. Director Groven. Director Higgins. Director Holt. Director Cotel. Director Lewis. Director Melvin.
Here.
Director Pang. Director Ross. Director Sager. Director Triani.
Here.
And Chairman Dillard.
Here.
We have a full quorum of 16 present and nobody absent.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Our first item of business is 3A, and that's the approval of the minutes from the meeting held here at CMAP on November 21st, 2019. Any comments or questions on that? If not, can I have a motion and a second? Director Andalcio moves that we approve, seconded by Director Cotel. And with that, Madam Secretary, why don't you take a roll call so we have a baseline?
All righty. Director Andalcio. Director Carey. Director Colson. Director Frega. Director Fuentes. Director Groven. Director Higgins. Director Holt. Director Cotel. Director Lewis. Director Melvin.
Aye.
Director Pang. Director Ross. Director Sager. Director Triani.
Aye.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
16 ayes.
Thank you. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting. I think our only signed in is Garland Armstrong. And Garland, good to see you back. Hopefully your eye surgery from a month ago went well. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Dillard and directors. My wife and I are concerned about the Cumberland Circle where the pace buses 208, 221, and 234. Every time when we're on there, coming to the stop sign area, there are drivers who feels like don't want to stop at all at that circle. And one time, me and my wife was on the bus and we almost came close to being an accident. So we need to make sure to try and tell the drivers, stop means stop, but sometimes they don't want to stop. They want to go ahead and zoom on and feel like they're in a rush and don't know why, because we need the directors go out there to displays at the Cumberland Circle, right where State Street, Gulf Road, and Wolf Road is, and see how bad it is, because especially the drivers don't want to come to a complete stop, even when the buses is going to try to make a turn or having a hard time going through there, and especially to repair transit too, also in that same direction. So you need to go out there and check it out, because it could be an incident waiting to happen right there at the Cumberland Circle and displays, because we don't know, God forbid, what will happen next.
Do you go to Pace's meetings and tell them this, Garland?
My wife did. She told about it yesterday, and sometimes too I just listen in, because definitely I think some of the directors needs to go out there and see it firsthand, because me and my wife who lives in Des Plaines, we know about it so much, but then we need one of the directors to see it firsthand there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and also just want to say thank you everybody from the bottom of my heart, because it got me so emotional too, because after that recovery, and just want to say thank you everybody. And I wish I could give a thank y'all hug for having me back, because it made me so happy.
It's good to have you back, and we're glad the surgery went well. Thank you. Item 5 is the Executive Director's Report. Leanne?
So, through the end of November, the state owes the RTA $244.2 million in the combination of the ASA, AFA, and the PTF funding. The state is about 5 months behind on the ASA and about 10 months behind on the AFA. They're the two combinations of the funding towards the debt service. and about 4.5 months behind, to be very specific, on the PTF side of things. The year-to-date cost of carrying that short-term debt for us is about $4.7 million, so it's down a lot, but it's still up there. It's still real money. On the topic of debt, I'm pleased to announce that on Monday, Fitch Ratings upgraded its rating of the RTA's $1.7 billion in general obligation bonds and notes from AA to AA+, affirming the RTA's stable outlook. So while rating agencies consider many factors in determining the issuer's rating, Fitch did note several things in its press release, and I just kind of want to highlight a couple of those. The factors that they considered were the solid pledge of revenue growth, rating agency speak for the RTA and annual sales tax and PTF increases, spoke to those. There was exceptional financial resilience through the recent state budget crisis, which resulted in severe state payment delays. Improved cash flow from reduced state payment delays that we've reported out to you guys last month. Strong debt service coverage. Rating agencies spoke of the ratio of annual sales tax receipts to debt service payments. And then finally, they also noted the passage of Rebuild Illinois and its impact on the RTA's 5-year capital program. So I think that was, they're paying attention. They've noticed the good work that RTA, under your leadership, have been doing. And I want to specifically thank B and the Treasury team, Bill, Martin, and Alex, for the work that you guys do on a daily basis on some of this to work and keep us in that very stable place. AA plus is the second highest Fitch rating. The next highest we can aspire to is AAA's. But all in all, that's some great news. We've posted their website on their full press release on our website. So just a couple of legislative updates. The Illinois House and Senate remain out of session until late January. It's expected that the Senate will return for a special session in January to vote for a new Senate president after Senator Cullerton, current president, announced his retirement. On the federal side, Congress returned to Washington following a Thanksgiving recess on December 3rd. Before the break, the lawmakers have been focused on some other things. FY 2020 spending bills, including the passing of a second continuing resolution to keep the government funded through December 20. A deal was actually reached, I'm not sure if it was earlier this week or late last week, to actually, for more detailed, for funding that will actually keep the government running through September 2020. As always, we are still sharing with you a more detailed legislative update, but we are now doing that electronically, so look in your email boxes for those to give you a much more thorough discussion of the work that's happening on the legislative side. One more quick update. Staff is wrapping up the 2020 Community Planning Program Call for Project process. That's the effort that we do in conjunction with CMAP and wide net across the entire region for projects. The proposed program of projects, bit of a tongue twister, includes 9 new diverse projects that will be released for public comment starting January 10th and ending February 8th. Information on the proposed projects and instructions on how people can submit public comments will be available on the website beginning January 10th and available during that whole period. Staff plan to present that final program of projects at our February board meeting. That concludes my short and brief report for this month. I want to wish everybody happy holidays, safe and relaxing time, hopefully. And with that, I will turn it back to the chairman or answer any questions that you might have. Director Lewis.
Any questions? Director Lewis.
Leanne, did we ask Fitch for the review, or did they do it just in the normal course of life?
I think it was just their normal course. They just do periodic reviews, and this was one that they just did. So this wasn't one because you usually only typically ask when you're going out to issue or you've got something major happening. So this was just their normal course, but it was welcome news.
Good. And then the second and final question is, I know our $400 million short-term authorization, I thought I saw we're down to $150 million outstanding. Is the plan to take that to zero? Given the fact that the states funded a lot of the projects, or what is the prognosis?
So obviously we try to borrow as little as possible, and through managing our reserves, we were able to kind of like move money around. And we're able to pay off early ahead of time. The 250 million that we're due in December, we paid it off in November, but obviously we're able to do it because the state has been more prompt in paying us. We can't take credit for that. So we have 150 million that are outstanding, and those are due in May. And so we need to make a decision. If the state continues to pay the way they've been paying, why go out and borrow it all? Back to Director Colson's point out there. On the other hand, we can't leave ourselves so tight that, 2-3 months delay, all of a sudden the service boards, which they need to, that's the purpose of the short-term borrowing, to not have any state delays impact them, and they need it. They've got service on the street. They've got to have that steady flow of cash. So we might think about doing something like a line of credit, which would be a little bit lower cost. I mean, we keep trying to figure out what other, borrowing tools could we have in our tool belt so that we have easy access, but we're not paying, like we have an unused rate for some of our money so that we pay a little less, but we can still tap into it easily. And so maybe we're thinking maybe a line of credit or something like that. So we'll see. It just depends on what's going on, but we do need to do something by April, either to, plan ahead and get another short-term borrowing tool, or know that we're going to be able to pay that 150 million, not go back out.
Yeah, I like that thinking, B, because I think that that unreimbursed expense, which has gone down, it's good to keep it going in that direction because the state does not reimburse us for the cost
Right.
of capital. So that's good news.
So we'll see.
But I mean, just to highlight, as B said, making sure that we have access to that liquidity if we need it is important because, it wouldn't be unheard of for the state to just not pay sometimes for 3 months, and then all of a sudden that's operating revenue or operating monies that the service boards rely on, and we have to be able to tap. While we'll pay down as much as we can, we want to have that flexibility to go get stuff if we need it.
Leanne, what does the state owe us now, and how are they doing with the pay up?
So right now they owe us about $244 million. And over the last couple of months, I think we've highlighted a few times that they've been more regular, and they actually did a couple of catch-up payments for us. But, we're keeping sort of cautiously optimistic that that'll continue. It is down significantly because we were up to the $400 million range not that long ago. So, it's down significantly, but, it's still $244 million, which is still real money. Yeah.
$250 million. I always like to say it's $250 million. But, it's real money. All right, thank you, Leanne. Item 6A is a report on the RTA pension investments by Bill Lackman, and B, my guess is when Fitch looks at us, they clearly look at where we are with respect to retirement funding, and that's a plus for us as well. So we're one of the few agencies around that actually has a AA plus credit rating and a retirement system that is solvent, especially by Illinois standards. Bill?
Very good. Good morning, Chairman Dillard, members of the RTA Board. As we approach the end of the year and the end of the decade, we thought it would be a good time to provide the Board with a briefing about the RTA pension plan. A good number of you have joined the Board in the past 12 to 24 months, so some background about the plan should be informative. Before I begin, I'd like to mention that with us today is Ali Wallace, a principal consultant with Makita Investment Group, the plan's investment consultant. Ali is not only a co-lead investment consultant for the RTA plan, but she is also the chair of Makita's Emerging and Diverse Manager Committee. First, some general information about the plan. The RTA pension plan covers all RTA employees as well as non-represented employees of METRA and PACE. The plan is governed by the RTA pension trustees and the RTA pension committee. The pension trustees invest the plan assets and monitor the investment portfolio performance with the assistance of the investment consultant. The Board of Trustees consists of 3 transit agency trustees, 1 each from the RTA, METRA, and PACE, and 4 outside trustees appointed by the RTA Board. I chair the Board of Trustees. The Pension Committee, chaired by RTA General Counsel Nadine Lacombe, consists of 2 staff representatives each from the RTA, METRA, and PACE. The committee administers and oversees the plan structure claims review, and service providers, except for the investment committee, the investment consultant. The remaining service providers include the custodian, Northern Trust, the plan counsel, McGuire Woods, plan actuaries, GRS, and the third-party administrator, Reed Ramsey. All of these service providers were selected through a competitive process. Next, some recent pension trustee activities. The trustees are wrapping up a search for a replacement small-cap core equity manager. At our meeting in November, the trustees interviewed finalists and selected a new investment manager for this asset class. Earlier this year, the pension committee hired a minority DBE asset management firm to transition this investment from the prior investment manager to the new one. Also at the November meeting, the trustees adopted an environmental, social, and governance, or ESG policy. Under this policy, the trustees will consider material, relevant, and decision-useful sustainability factors within the bounds of financial and fiduciary prudence in the evaluating of investment decisions. Now, let's do the numbers. Net of fees, third quarter and year-to-date returns through September 30th on the assets of the RTA pension plan were 0.1% and 11.7% respectively. As of January 1st, the funded ratio of the plan is 89.3%, with an unfunded liability of $38.6 million. That is, the assets of the plan are projected to cover nearly 90% of the benefits earned by plan participants. Last year, plan administrative and investment expenses of $1.1 million accounted for less than 0.5% of the plan's year-end net position of $270 million. The market value of the plan's assets totaled $296.3 million as of September 30th. Of this amount, $25.6 million, or 8.7%, is managed by a minority-owned DBE investment manager. If you're interested in even more stats about the plan, you can find the actuarial valuations and the audited financial statements on the RTA website. Finally, I'd like to talk briefly about the selection of investment managers for the RTA pension plan. The plan's investment consultant, Makita Investment Group, assists the trustees in selecting investment managers and monitors their performance over time against peers and benchmarks. Makita's Emerging and Diverse Investment Committee is responsible for helping their research team source and track new MWDBE investment managers through a proactive outreach to the emerging and diverse manager community. Makita conducts semi-annual emerging and diverse manager research days. At the last research day, approximately 35 managers pitched their strategies to the Makita research analyst responsible for overseeing their investment class. Makita also actively engages with key finance industry organizations that encourage diversity. Over the past 5 years, Makita has expanded its investment manager database to include 3 times as many emerging and diverse firms. In both 2017 and 2018, approximately 40% of the searches Makita conducted on behalf of clients included MWDBE firms as finalists. As a result, in both years, Makita's clients made $1 billion in new investments to MWDBE firms. As I mentioned, with us today is Ali Wallace from Makita, who can address questions about searching for new or replacement investment managers and ensuring the inclusion of diverse managers in the selection process. So Ali and I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Director Lewis.
Bill, you probably said it, but of the total funds, what percentage are managed by either MBE or DBE firms? So the total pie.
Of the total, 8.7% is managed by DBE firm.
Is that up or down from prior years?
It's been pretty consistent for the last few years.
Okay. And so is the goal to try and maybe make it a little larger? Because if we've been doing this, usually the percentages oftentimes go up. Is that the plan?
So with the new ESG policy, that is the goal.
And what would the goal be over the next couple of years?
So there isn't a specific goal. We are constantly monitoring our investments to see which investment managers might need to be replaced. And when they are replaced, the goal is to make sure that there are DBE firms included in the interview process.
But there are more that have been identified based on what you said. There have been more DBE firms that have been identified. So I guess theoretically, there would be a better probability that a firm might be selected in that process. Is that a correct statement?
Right, and it depends on the asset class and whether there are DBE firms in that asset class that Makita recommends to us.
Okay. So it wouldn't be inconceivable that next year, rather than 8.7%, we might see something like 10 or 15%.
It all depends on whether that we introduce a new asset class or replace an existing manager and how the interview process goes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll continue to monitor. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, Director Andalcio, good morning.
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend the efforts for reaching out to MWBE firms and making it very inclusive. And just to dovetail on Director Lewis's comments, definitely with the process or the continued process, we'd certainly like to see an increase in participation higher than the 8.7%, especially representing and recognizing the community in which these investments serve. Thank you.
Yes, Director Holt.
Bill, could you talk about the performance of the fund as compared to peers? I'm particularly looking at the quarter to date and the year-to-date numbers.
So,
and if you don't have them off the top of your head,
I don't have them off the top of my head, but we do have a report. We look at how we do versus how our investments do against their peers. As far as the plan itself, the problem we have with comparisons of the total plan is every plan has different investments. So depending on the mix within your plan in any given period of time, you're going to have different results. So
Understood, but there have got to be benchmark and peer plans that we take a look at, and I'm just curious just directionally to where we are, which quartile we're in, how our performance is going over time.
you want to talk about that?
So happy to get more data points for you as it pertains to peer rankings, but when you look at the year-to-date performance, you're in the 61st percentile.
Okay.
That's slightly below median, and I think it's partially a byproduct of the fact that the fund has been in transition. So we were retained about 2 years ago as the new investment consultant, at which point we adopted a strategic asset allocation, which we think is aligned with the long-term goals of the plan. And over that time, we've been working to fund these new asset classes. So that the fund has been in transition over the past year, generating an 11.7% return year to date, so strong in absolute terms, but pretty close to median relative to your peer group, which is a universe of, I think, about 300 public funds throughout the country.
Okay. Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. Okay.
Dr. Sager, good morning.
Well, thank you. I want to say that I'm incredibly impressed and pleased and want to extend my gratitude and commendation for the level of the funding of the system. I mean, on a relative basis with other pension systems, this is just quite phenomenal. So I think that it's very important to look at the profit generation, but at the same time, the basic ability to be able to fund a system at that level is, quite frankly, remarkable to me. So I want to say thank you and appreciate that very much.
So one of the things that makes that possible, and I was explaining this to Director Melvin before, is there are 3 employers in the plan, and each of them makes sure that the other 2 makes their contributions. Whatever you're doing, it works.
Otherwise they face B. It works. You know, when anybody ever questions why you need an RTA. I tell them, look, we have a AA+ credit rating, and we have a 90%, funded pension plan. Anybody else manage better than we do? Yes, Dr. Melvin.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and the fact that you guys have been really disciplined, and you've got a great story on the pension fund funding, and at our last meeting, we heard from CTA and how they have to take money out of the operating money to put money in their pension fund because they're only at 52%. So it has real meaning that you guys have done such a great job and been so disciplined and so consistent. So just congratulations on that. My only question to Makita is how do you announce your searches, please? That would be my only question, please. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So we advise on 1.4 trillion in assets for a variety of plans throughout the country. A vast majority of that is for public fund business. So as a result, they require that we go through formal RFP processes. So you'll see oftentimes our searches are advertised in P&I, Fundfire, other news organizations, as well as on our website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you. Thank you, Ally. Thank you, Bill, as always. All right. Item 7 are the consent items as they appear on the board agenda. 7A is the ordinances authorizing the quarterly amendment of our 4-year capital program. 7B is the ordinance adopting the 2020 regional and service boards. Any questions or further comments on this very elaborate process, which we approve quickly, but there is literally thousands and thousands of work hours into 7B and 7A. If there's no questions, can I have a motion and a second on 7A, or the items on 7 be approved? Director Carey moves, seconded by Director Melvin, that we approve the items 7A and 7B. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection, leave is granted. Thank you very much.
16 ayes.
Item 8 is the approval of contract and expenditure items as they appear on the board agenda. These items include an ordinance authorizing a contract for the operations of the RTA Travel Information Center, of which I think everybody's read the number of human contacts with that Travel Information Center. Blows my mind every year how many millions of operations it has. 8B is the ordinance authorizing a contract for state legislative consulting services. There's only one little change there. One of our lobbyists changed firms. She was the principal contact at that firm. Then the contract's going to go to her new firm rather than her old firm. And as I was kidding Director Melvin during his committee meeting, the push of this lobbyist group this year is obviously to permanently try to restore some of those operations cuts. Remind the legislature that the 1.5% sales tax surcharge that they put on us is $20 million. It's real money, as Director Friga would like to say. But it is just to try to stop those cuts. And again, I think I said last month that most legislators probably don't realize that we've taken a cut in operations. They just know we're getting more capital infusion. But we've got to educate them on the operations side, and that's what Jeremy's going to be all over our state legislative consultants to do. 8C is the ordinance authorizing a contract for Microsoft Premier support, and 8D are travel expenses for board members, and I think there may be one or two for Leanne in there that we're on because of time constraints that are on there as well. Nope. Any questions or comments on any of those? If not, can I have a motion and second on those? Director Groven, thank you, moves that we adopt, seconded by Director Andolcio. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on those? Seeing no objection, leave is granted.
16 ayes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Chairman, mark me down. Mark
Yeah,
me
you want
down
to
as an
abstain, right, on the
abstain from
Microsoft
the
one?
Microsoft, please.
Yep, Madam Secretary, will you please make sure on the Microsoft one that Director Trione abstains? Thank you, Doug, for reminding me of that.
Thank you.
Item 9 is a special action item. This item is an ordinance appointing Allison Novak as the RTA's ethics officer, following the legendary, and he's not going anywhere for a while, Mike Zumak, who is going to transition sometime, it's hard to believe, into retirement. But Nadine, anything you want to say on here?
Yeah, indulge me. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and the end of this meeting. Good morning and happy holidays to everyone. This is a fairly perfunctory matter in that we're fulfilling a statutory requirement by asking the board to formally appoint Allison Novak, who is sitting in the audience, as the RTA's new ethics officer. The State Officials and Employees Ethics Act requires that the transit boards appoint someone to fulfill the role of ethics officer. The position is one that involves training staff, addressing questions related to ethics and compliance with the act and matters of interpretation vis-a-vis the law and our ethics policy. As you know, Michael Zumak has served in this role for nearly 8 years and is preparing to retire. I'm here to recommend that Deputy General Counsel Allison Novak be appointed as his successor. She's an attorney with 16 years of legal experience, most of it in the public sector. Most of you have worked with Allison during her 7.5-year tenure here as Deputy General Counsel. You're aware of the sensitive matters that she's addressed for the agency, the judgment, professionalism, character, and skill that she brings to that position. She will certainly apply those same principles and qualities as RTA's ethics officer. I also want to take a moment to thank Mike for his years of service. He's still here, he's not leaving yet, but I do want to say thank you to him for serving in this role and for aiding to transition these duties to Allison seamlessly. I'm happy to take any questions, and so is Mike, and so is Allison.
This is Michael. He's legendary, as Allison will be. But thank you both.
Thank you.
Any questions here? Allison's the right choice. And Michael, thank you. You'll have your day before the board when that day comes. Can I have a motion and a second to approve this? Sarah Pang moves that, Director Pang moves. We approve, seconded by Director Lewis. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on that? Seeing no objection, leave is granted.
16 ayes.
Thank you. Item 10 is new business. Any issue to be raised under new business? If not, I'm going to wish everybody a happy and safe holiday season. Thank you for your incredible work all year long. It's been a very good year. We actually saw a capital plan passed, and we'll worry about focusing on our operations cuts from Springfield, and depending upon how the presidential election turns out in a year or so, hopefully we'll have a federal infrastructure bill as well. But again, to the staff, thank you. You continue to serve us in the public and our riders so well. We are lucky to have you. You make the board look great every day, and to the board, thank you. It's just the fact that during the holiday season we have a 16 versus nothing attendance record shows your dedication and the professionalism of not only the staff but the board. Never ceases to amaze me, and I thank you all for your service. So everybody have a great and safe holiday season. As a reminder, our next meeting is January 16th of the next decade. Hard to believe. And the meeting will be right here at CMAP's Willis Tower offices beginning at 9 a.m., followed by board meetings. So if there's no other business to come before the RTA, Director Andalcio moves we adjourn, seconded by Director Ryan Higgins. And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Thanks for using WebEx.